There are 5 ways. The first is seasonal. The period of Muharram and Safar comes and goes, and so too does our participation with Imam Hussain alayhi salam come and go. The second is emotional. This has some merits, but it also has some potential weaknesses in it. The third is intellectual. This also has great merit, but also has some potential pitfalls. The fourth is to follow Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam by action, which has all of the potential merits in it, but there is only one potential drawback. And then the fifth way one can serve Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is the most complete way, which is to serve Imam through all of the previous, but also through action, and to be able to ensure that they avoid everything that their enemies stand for. And when we ensure that there is an emotional element, an intellectual element, the act that we do follows Imam, and we also separate ourselves from the practices of those whom he opposed, those who are the enemies of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, then this is the complete way in which we can serve and follow Aba Abdullah al-Hussain salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Think with me for a couple of minutes about each of these 5 different ways. The first one was seasonal. What we mean is that when the days of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam approach, the way in which our behaviors change, not permanently, but temporarily, because we honor the season of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam without having truly honored the Imam himself. The season comes, and for us, it will start when either Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam departs Mecca, or maybe from the point in which Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil alayhi salam is martyred, or maybe for the 1st of Muharram. The black cloth comes. Our attendance is now going to be for 12 or 14 nights, or whatever it may be. There is a season, the ayyam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are upon us. But we also know that there are certain cultural practices that come in. And of course, some of them are very good. But some of them are only done temporarily without thinking through what these practices mean. For example, we often know that there are some that will, for example, switch off haram music in the month of Muharram, or at least in the Ashra, or something like this. Or maybe until Eid al-Zahra. And so their activities, of course, are in honor of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. They will say, to honor Imam, we will switch off the haram music. We will stop watching haram, whatever it may be. But the moment the black cloth goes down, or the moment the Ashra finishes, then the haram returns. Actually, what we are doing is we are belittling Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, and we are also belittling Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. And in reality, this action is actually a mode of shirk. To say that I will stop doing something that I know is haram for the sake of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, and not for the sake of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, knowing that it is haram, but then actually reverting back to it the moment that the season in my mind finishes, is actually reducing the movement of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Yes, it is good to stop doing the haram for 1 day, for 10 days, for a year. But the goal shouldn't be to switch off haram for 10 days. The goal shouldn't be for us to be able to switch off haram for 2 months and 8 days until Eid al-Zahra comes. You see this especially amongst youth in the internet culture. Those of you who are online and you're part of kind of that, Twitter scene, Instagram scene, maybe even TikTok. Some of these are borderline very, very problematic. But you will often see, especially when Muslims come to the month of Ramadan, it's great. Everyone says, fantastic. There is great effort put in. But if the niyyah was only to start praying for 1 month, if the niyyah was that, I'm going to avoid haram, but on the day of Eid, I'm going to dress up in makeup, dress my best, put my picture out there so that I can get as many likes as possible, have as many guys DM me as possible, then what you really are saying is nothing was really learned. The action was there. You fasted. I fasted. We were there present on Qadr nights. But did it actually take any effect on me? because the moment the day of Eid came, my behavior shifted again. Similarly, for many of us, the moment the day of Ashura finishes, our behaviors revert. Or maybe after 2 months and 8 days, the behavior reverts. This is the seasonal Muslim or the seasonal lover of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. This can be improved upon. And if any of us have this, we should try to reflect on whether we are moving with Imam Hussain alayhi salam for 10 days or whether we want it to be as a permanent feature of our life. This is one. The second is emotional. To be emotionally tied to Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is amongst the most incorrigible things that we can do. To weep for Imam al-Hussain loudly. To go out of our way to find a majlis that is remembering Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is amongst the best of the things that we can do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that love for Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is not mustahab. It's not even mustahab mu'akkid. It's not something that's just highly recommended. It is wajib for you and I. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. Love, unadulterated, overwhelming, overflowing love for Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is what is expected from us. And all of us here reach that level, inshaAllah. And none of us can put a lid back on what has already been opened since we were born. But we also have to realize that simply love in and of itself is good, but it is not complete. It is not the only part of the way in which we are to engage with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. It forms one of the ways in which we engage with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. There is also the intellectual way. And for many of us, when we come to the movement of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, we want to understand the movement of Imam not through a dogmatic way. We want to read his sayings, his sermons. We want to understand his movement for ourselves. We want to understand the theology, the ideology of that movement for ourselves. But of course, there is the drawback. Because potentially, if we only approach the movement of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam intellectually, without understanding the emotion of it, without understanding the application of it, then we are potentially leaving ourselves open to having theories that might not necessarily be correct. And so we are more engaged in the intellectual debate about Imam and Imam's movement without understanding the other aspects that have to come into the movement as well. So it's important. Intellectually is very important. The fikr or the fikriyan approach has a huge role to play, but it cannot be the only way in which we approach Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. So we have the seasonal, we have the emotional, and we also have the intellectual. Another way to approach Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam is by adopting his actions. And many of us are doing this. We understand that Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam stood for truth and justice against all oppression and did not fear one iota of any arrow that might have approached him. If it meant giving his life, his wealth, his family, and his companions, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam was ready to do this. And so many of us have adopted this as well. And so when it comes to the movement of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, we want to adopt the actions of Imam. Again, this is almost at the full quality of Imam. But we also realize that part of our adopting the actions of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam means to be able to avoid everything that was represented by the a'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the other side, by Banu Umayyah, by Yazid, by Ibn Ziyad, by all of these accursed individuals and the system that they represent.